All right, all right. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to Scale Smarter. I am Ollie Taylor from Wisdom and Wayfinder, joined by my co-host, Frank Majorana from JustWorks. How's it
Yeah,
going, Frank?
doing going well, Ali. Good morning.
Good morning. Good morning indeed. It is a nice, beautiful day outside, so we're going to enjoy this false spring before the cold weather returns next week.
Yeah,
But,
yeah. I think it's gonna what? It's gonna be about 70 today again. So
yeah,
hopefully everyone gets a chance to get outside today. So
yeah, absolutely. But before you do that, make sure that you stay for this conversation because we are excited to have with us today Seamus Whalen from Harbor Point Wealth Management. Seamus, welcome to Scaling Smarter.
Hi, good morning, and thank you guys both for having me on here. Really excited to be a part of the program.
Yeah, absolutely. Before we jump into the rest of the conversation, there are some important disclaimers that I must absolutely give. First of all, this conversation is for informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, tax, or professional or financial advice. Please consult your own attorney, CPA, or other qualified financial professional regarding your specific business or personal situation. And lastly, Wisdom and Wayfinder, JustWorks, and Harbor Point Wealth Management and LPL Financial are completely separate entities. All right. So with that, Seamus, why don't you just give us a quick intro to who you are and what it is that you do and how you got to this point in your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So my name is Seamus Whalen, and I'm the founder of Harbor Point Wealth Management. So we're an independent advisory firm focused on helping individuals, families, and business owners make smarter financial decisions and navigate the complex financial planning issues. I've been in the financial service industry for nearly 20 years, previously working with firms such as Merrill Lynch and JP Morgan, where I advise my clients on investment strategies, retirement planning, long-term wealth management. And I founded Harbor Point Wealth Management to provide a more personalized and comprehensive approach to financial advice, helping clients align their financial resources with their long-term goals and the life that they want to live. So I'm excited to be part of today's conversation, and I look forward to sharing the insights that can help business owners and professionals make more informed financial decisions.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, we're glad to have you here. And yeah, I think the first question that we kind of settled on was, many business owners think that retirement planning just means opening a 401k, right? And today we're talking about going beyond the 401k. From your perspective, how is retirement planning different for business owners compared to employees?
Yeah, absolutely. And starting off with, when people start getting into the business, right? Start their own company, right?
Mhm.
As it starts to progress and grow, they want to go and start finding ways of how we can start putting money away. And the first natural step towards that is going to be through what we call is either a SEP IRA or a solo 401k. And within there, that's where you really have the solo entrepreneurs, you have the independent contractors, businesses with no employees. So really in the early stages of the companies. So once employees start to enter the picture, right, this is where SEPs really start becoming, really inefficient. Both these plans work well for entrepreneurs who are essentially operating on their own, or
Mhm.
maybe with a spouse in the business. And the reason that they're popular is because, very simply, it's very simple to set up and administer. The SEP IRA allows the business owner to contribute up to 25% of their compensation, and it's entirely employer funded. Now, a solo 401k offers more flexibility because the owner contribute both as an employee and the employer, which often allows higher total contributions at lower income levels. So where we start to see the challenges is with SEP IRAs is when the businesses begin to hire employees. So under a SEP plan, if the owner contributes for themselves, they must contribute the same percentage for eligible employees. So what
Mm.
starts off as a simple solution can become expensive as the company grows.
hmm
That's typically the point where business owners begin transitioning into a 401k structure, which gives them more flexibility on how contributions are structured.
So what? So when you're making that conversion, right? When they're deciding to go from a SEP to a 401k, can they roll those monies into the 401k? Like, what's that process look like for the owner, or is it just starting up a whole new 401k with employees?
No, the absolutely have the ability to do so. Right. And so they can do a multitude of things. You can keep it into the SEP IRA. They can roll it into their 401ks. Right now, within a SEP IRA, you literally have an ocean of investment choices to pick from. Right. So the good of that is, you can really customize how you want to invest your assets. The problem with that is that now that you have all the choices under the sun, we can end up getting paralysis by analysis.
Yeah.
This is where a professional advisor comes into play to help out and guide toward finding what's the right type of risk and allocation in order to meet the risk tolerant time horizon and their goals. Inside of a 401k, you're going to have a preset menu to give you diversification, as well as with most plans, not all of them offer that, but having the ability to do target date funds, right, where it's going to have asset allocation in a portfolio based upon when you anticipate to retire.
So, when you, and mostly, like, it's as far as like it's a vary from like record keeper to record keeper as far as what the investment choices are.
Yeah, so depending on the size of the company, the how they want to structure those accounts, and then who the plan provider is going to be, they'll be able to construct and put together a diversified portfolio with to be allowed for the business owners and the employees.
James, one thing we talked a lot about, knowing each other for a bit, is about the fiduciary responsibility and who's responsible. And a lot of times, when you open up a 401k, business owners or whoever's signing on that 5,500 doesn't quite understand what their responsibilities are. Could you just talk a little bit about just some of the risk that an employer is taking when he or she is starting a 401k?
Yeah, absolutely, right. And going back in history, when the Employee Retirement Income Security Act of 1974, or also known as ERISA, came about, they created and put in there the 4 core fiduciary duties. So the first one is going to be the duty of loyalty. So somebody as a business owner or as a fiduciary on the plan must act only in the best interest of plan participants and the beneficiaries, not in the interest of the company or themselves. What this does is this avoids conflict of interest. It ensures decision benefits the employees participating in the plan, and the fees included with that must be reasonable for the services that are provided. The second part of it is the duty of prudence. So fiduciaries must act with care, skill, prudence, and diligence that a knowledgeable professional would use. So what this means is that following a documented process when making plan decisions, reviewing plan investments regularly, and monitoring service providers and their fees. So a prudent process is more important than really the investment performance itself. The next part of it is really the duty to diversify investments. So plan fiduciaries must ensure that the plan offers diversified investment options so participants can manage their risk appropriately. Your typical diversification includes large cap funds, international funds, bond funds, or target date funds, as well as stable value or cash options. The last part is the duty to follow the plan documents. So a fiduciary must operate the plan according to the plan document itself, as long as the provisions comply within ERISA. So this includes eligibility rules, contribution limits, matching formulas, or vesting schedules. And failure to follow the plan document is a very, very common compliance issue.
Wow. And what are, and go ahead.
No, go ahead, Frank.
And what are some of the and if you can't get into it, that's fine. But what are some of the penalties associated with not doing those four things correctly?
So a big part of that is what we want to avoid, especially with compliance and not recording your meetings, that you're doing your due diligence.
Mm-hmm.
By doing so, what that does is that ends up creating an audit. Right? And depending on the size of the company, you want to work with a plan auditor to make sure that a few things are taking place, right? And this will be a really good segue into kind of the structures of how some of these different plans work when it comes to certain penalties, right? So the first one, when we talk about any major ERISA penalties, is going to be the fiduciary breach penalty. So if a fiduciary violates their duties, right, they could be held personally liable. And some of the potential consequences for that is that you can restore all financial losses to the plan. It could discourage any profits that were gained through improper actions, and you might have to pay civil penalties. Common civil penalty is about 20% penalty on the amount that was recovered by the Department of Labor for fiduciary breaches. So example is if a fiduciary breach caused $500,000 in losses, the fiduciary would be responsible for restoring the loss plus an additional 20%.
Wow.
Now, Frank, you were just talking about the Form 5500, right?
Yep.
So a Form 5500, if we have a late filing, there's a penalty with that. And that could be up to $2,700 per day from the Department of Labor penalty, plus an additional IRS penalty of $250 per day. This can quickly accumulate into large fines if this gets ignored. So many plans use the Delinquent Filer Voluntary Compliance Program, or DFVCP, because we love acronyms in our industry. That helps there to reduce these penalties. Some other ones would be failure to provide required disclosures. Right? You need to send out to all the participants your summary plan description, summary of any material modifications, participant fee disclosures, and your benefit statement. If you miss that, that's about $110 per day per participant. If that gets missed.
Wow.
A large company, these things start racking up very quickly. Another one is late employee contribution deposits. So if the employee makes their 401k contribution, it must be deposited as soon as administratively feasible. If deposits are late, it becomes a prohibited transaction. The employer's got to restore any lost earnings, and the IRS excise tax may apply. This is probably one of the most common ERISA violations.
Yeah, that all sounds like it can be a very expensive. Like if you have a large company, you probably have someone who's dedicated to keeping on top of those things. You probably have a whole department. But if you're a small business, you've got like, you're the founder, the CEO, and you've got like maybe 5 employees that you're trying to do this for. It sounds like you can easily get yourself into trouble if you don't have a dedicated system or plan to follow to really make sure that these things are being done correctly.
Correct. Yeah. Having a structure in place and adhering to it is paramount. We spend so much of our time, in working on the business and doing the things that we're really good at. This is where hiring and bringing in additional resources really help out, because we're so focused on the day to day, we tend to miss some of these things. And then the next thing you know, we get that letter in the mail and nobody wants to deal with that.
No, God, no. Well, speaking of structure, you did share with us, like a 5 stages for business retirement planning. Would now be a good time to kind of dive into that?
Yeah, I think that would be great, and if we could keep it up as if it's on the side, just to help out with this, because this gives a really good visual of the kind of the structure and the process as things go. As business grows and develops. So, one way that I like to visualize is what I like to call is the business owner retirement plan ladder. And at the earliest stages, when someone's operating on their own or have a few employees, they may start with something like a SEP IRA or the solo 401k. But as the business grows and it starts to begin hiring employees, many companies transition into a safe harbor 401k. This is great because so owners can maximize their contributions without testing limitations. And we'll get into that in just a minute.
Okay.
So as companies become more sophisticated, the plan design may evolve into something called a cross-testing structure, which can allocate contributions more efficiently across different employee groups. So for highly profitable companies, this sometimes adds a cash balance plan, which allows for very large tax deduction or tax deductible retirement contributions. And finally, for some businesses, non-qualified deferred compensation plans, and that could be layered on top to provide additional executive benefits or tax planning opportunities. So the key takeaway is that retirement planning for business owners really evolve alongside the business itself. The first stage in this, right, the first rung on the ladder, is usually the point where companies transition into what's called that safe harbor 401k. And the safe harbor plan is designed to remove a lot of the contribution limitations that can affect highly compensated employees, which often includes the business owner. So without safe harbor provisions, owners can sometimes find themselves limited in how much they can contribute if employees aren't contributing enough. The safe harbor structure solves that problem by requiring the employer to make the minimum contribution for employees, which allows the owners to contribute the full annual amount limit without worrying about failing those tests.
Gotcha. Sorry, and
So-
I just want to add.
Yep.
Sorry, just want to add another just disclaimer as well. Remember, this conversation is for informational purposes only. It does not constitute legal, tax, professional, or financial advice. Please consult your own qualified professional for your specific business situation.
Seamus, you were bringing something up as far as like, a lot of business owners run into this where they'll have employees that are not contributing as much as they did like, right? People need, especially in kind of the way the economy is today, a lot of people are holding on to dollars, as opposed to necessarily investing in their future. What's the, how do you help business owners, or what do you say to business owners when they're facing that challenge by itself, and ways to kind of get employees to start to contribute, or just kind of how do you deal with it?
Right. So the first one, and especially with the safe harbor part of that, is the employer is already contributing. Once they enroll, right? So having an automatic enrollment is one of the most effective solutions. So instead of employees opting into the plan, they're automatically enrolled unless they decide to opt out. So a typical structure for that would default contributions to anywhere from 3 to 6% of a salary. And then what they would do is they'll put a default investment in there, right? And that's going to be a target date fund. So participant rates typically jump, rough estimate, from anywhere from 40 to 60% up to 80, 95% when automatic enrollment is implemented. So automatic contribution, could definitely help where employee starts at 3%, the contributions increase to 1% per year, and then they cap between 10 to 15%. And employees usually accept this because it's a slow, gradual increase. And as they are growing and they're moving in the business and things are profitable, then they can keep contributing more to help plan for their retirement.
So along those lines, right? You're investing. The small business owners are investing in their employees. Then hopefully the employees are growing. Could you talk a little bit about how non-qualified comp is used as kind of a handcuff for keeping
Yep.
talent.
Yeah, we're going to get into that because that's going to be towards the latter stages as we move up the rung. But I would like to start with a situation that I came across as clients were transitioning from getting things started to getting off the ground. So, for an example, I worked with a small consulting firm that had about 8 employees, and the owner was earning roughly about, say, $250,000 a year. And they originally had a simple IRA, which limited their contributions significantly. Once we transitioned into the Safe Harbor 401k, the owner was able to increase their annual retirement contributions substantially while still providing a meaningful benefit to their employees. So for that business, it was the right next step in the evolution of the retirement plan. Now, as the plan or the business grows, right, what questions I tend to get is like, what else can we do, and how do we start enhancing what we're able to offer to our employees as a thank you for making the business successful, because we all can't do it without you. And so as the business becomes more profitable, the next layer often involves adding profit sharing and to the retirement plan. So this allows the company to make additional employer contributions on top of the 401k deferrals. And one of the advantages of profit sharing is the flexibility. So unlike the safe harbor contributions, right, profit sharing contributions are discretionary. So meaning the company can adjust them depending on how well the year went financially.
Oh, so if they have a good year, then they can actually contribute more. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly. Right? And from a tax planning perspective, this can be very powerful because it allows the owner to shift more of the income into tax-deferred retirement savings in profitable years. So a good example of that comes to mind is a construction company owner. He's in his mid-40s. His business has grown significantly, and now he's earning close to $500,000 annually. So by layering profit sharing plan alongside the Safe Harbor 401k, we were able to substantially increase the total retirement contribution he can make per year. At the same time, the plan still provided benefits to the employees, which helped with the retention and a little bit of the morale. That's really where retirement planning begins to intersect with both tax planning and business strategy.
Nice. Yeah, so it sounds like because I think when we were talking about this in the planning for this conversation, that you could pretty much use this as like not just a benefit, but it's also part of the company's financial strategy, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's where we begin to look at more sophisticated plan design. So the third on the rung, as you'll see, is this cross-tested plan design, and it's sometimes referred as a new comparability design. So this allows contributions to be allocated across different groups of employees while still complying with the IRS rules. What this means is in practice is that contributions can be structured differently for owners and say senior leadership compared to younger or lower paid employees. So when designed properly, this allows the business owner to significantly increase their own retirement contributions while still providing fair and meaningful benefits to their employees.
So they're actually able to invest or invest more, actually more dollars because of that.
Correct, right? Yeah. So with this strategy, it's used in qualified retirement plans, so it allows the employers to allocate different contribution percentages to those different groups. It's commonly used by business owners and professional practices like doctors, dentists, law firms, consultants, who want to maximize retirement contributions for owners or key employees while keeping the overall employer cost manageable. So these still must comply with the rules under ERISA, right? And so what happens with this though is, so instead of testing contributions as a percentage of pay today, cross-tested plans convert contributions into a benefit at retirement. So this method allows the plan to demonstrate that contributions are equitable when projected to retirement, even if current contribution percentages differ between the employee groups. Often you hear this described as rate group testing.
Mm-hmm.
So essentially, what you're saying is that the result is the overall result for the various employees will be similar, as far as like one getting a return of X, the other one will projected to get the similar return, or am I mishearing?
Yeah, not so much just on the return, but more so on, this is where a strategy like this comes in play of trying to keep key employees. Right. Okay. So how do we, we're in, say, that C-suite level, or I have my most important employees that I want to make sure we keep and nobody else can take them. This is another tool to be used for client employee retention.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And how about as far as like when you start looking at, you have the next rung on your ladder is your cash balance plans. So how does that work?
Right. So where cash balance plans comes into the picture, a cash balance plan is technically a defined benefit plan, but it functions in a way that feels very similar to a defined contribution plan, like a 401k. What makes these plans so powerful is the contribution limit. So depending on the owner's age and income, they may be able to contribute well into the six figures annually on a tax deductible basis.
Nice. So this plan sounds like, I mean, it'd be ideal for someone like my age, right? Like I'm turning 44 next week, right?
Yeah, so they're really effective for business owners who are typically 45 years or older. They're earning strong and consistent income, and they're looking to accelerate their retirement savings while reducing, their tax situation. So, for example, we worked with a medical practice owner. They were in their early 50s, who was earning around, say, $900,000 a year. And by implementing a 401k combined with a cash balance plan, they were able to create a structure that allowed them to move more than $250,000 per year into retirement accounts on a tax deductible basis. Nice. So for somebody in a high tax bracket, that can be very meaningfully have a meaningful impact on both their long-term retirement savings and their annual tax liability.
Nice. Are there any other? I imagine there's got to be like a ceiling to that, though, right?
Yeah, there are ceilings to this. When it comes to adding into a cash balance plan, there's income limits that do come into effect, right? So it's not like you can put 100% of it away into it.
Darn, that was my plan.
Yep. So here it is broken down by age. So the older you get, the more you have to contribute into it. So the IRS set a maximum annual retirement benefit payable at age 62. So let's just say for 2024 to 2026 planning ranges, the maximum annual benefit is somewhere right around $275,000 per year, payable at age 62. Mm-hmm. So the maximum contribution starting from age 40, you could do up to 100 to 150,000. 45 is 150 to 200. Age 50 is 200 to 300. Age 55 is 300 to 400, and then age 60 is between 400 and 500,000. Right, and these contributions are tax deductible to the business.
Gotcha. So again, it sounds like, like everything else that has to do with money, time is really your friend here. The earlier you start, the more you can compound. The more you can have your money like build up over time, and you don't have to pay as much as you get into those later years.
Right. So if you're in the peak earning years and you're still at a higher tax bracket, right, these are one of the strategies that's going to help reduce that. And if we get to a point where you're like, okay, now I can divert other assets anywhere else to do other things that you're looking to do because you felt like you filled your bucket or you worked with your planner advisor to start working on that retirement plan, right?
Mm-hmm.
Then yeah, you can start diversifying elsewhere. These are things that you tend to see business owners do pretty much right up to the end because they're deferring out so much of it where now they have time between the whatever age that they're going to be retiring at or transitioning out of the business before they have to start taking out required minimum distributions. So that allows for more time for growth deferral.
Yeah.
It's funny you talk about like time and planning and kind of consistency, right? Which is how you get from point A to a successful retirement. One of the things that you shared with me a while back, Seamus, which impressed me about the idea of getting to know you and kind of consulting and working together, is the fact that you take a truly holistic approach when you're working with your clients. Could you share with us a little bit about, outside of yourself, what does that team look like that a business owner should be working with from beginning all the way through retirement so that they're being kind of on one page, kind of moving forward?
Yeah, absolutely. As if anybody that's a business owner really starts getting the company off the ground and it really starts to grow, hiring a team of professionals around you truly helps create that extra layer of protection, whether it's your attorney, your CPA, your advisor, your specialist with consulting within the business itself, as well as all the benefits of what you're able to offer for your employees. What we tend to see is that a lot of professionals tend to put a lot of business owners tend to put the professionals into silos. And what ends up happening is that nobody ends up talking to each other. And by being able to bridge those gaps, we make sure that nothing falls through. You know, not to go off on a topic that I'm an expert in, but I do ask this question quite frequently, is that when I come across an individual business owner, it's, hey, do you have a standard operating agreement?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Do we have that in place? Because God forbid something happens, that could be very detrimental, especially in the way the laws are in the state of New Jersey. Right?
Yeah.
And, I don't go into full detail with that. I said, okay, well, do you work with who's your corporate attorney? Because these are important things to make sure that they're covered. We check that box, and now that's one less thing that you have to worry about. So by having a team of experts around you is going to help you get clarity. It's going to give you comfort in knowing that you have a support system in place, and especially if they're communicating and working cohesively together, the sky's the limit.
And when you look at that team, and you're working with the owner, how, and this may vary, it may be kind of event driven, but how often do you recommend business owners meet with their team of professionals and evaluate not just retirement, but some of these other pieces?
Yeah, it depends on the complexity and what they're looking to accomplish. I meet with my clients or the business owners. We want to do at least twice a year, especially when looking at the retirement savings plans. Right, we want to do that on an annual basis to review it, to make sure if there's been any changes to it, be able to run comparables of what else is out there, so that, hey, if we might end up being in a really good plan that fit the billing years ago, but as the business evolved, right, they've outgrown it without them even realizing it.
Yeah, that's definitely something I see happening a lot. Is, they kind of have the plan they started with, and they don't. And we talked about this with when we had Faye on, in terms of, a lot of business owners don't plan for the success that could be coming down the pike. They kind of just they just run with what they started with, and they just assume that that's efficient. Or they just plan for what could go wrong, but not for how well things can go as well.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. So having that vision and looking down the road of not just where things are from a day, a week, a month, a quarter, but hey, years down the road, do we have the business plan structured in place that we want to get there? What are the other things that we're not thinking about, right? So this is why I was jumped at the opportunity to get on and talk about all the different ways of how businesses can really start evolving and thinking of ways of how they can contribute more, save more in terms of the tax deferral that they might not be aware of.
We talk about business owners a lot about, how they're focused on growing their business, how they're focused on what they're great at, right? You're a contractor or whatever they may be. They're good at that particular skill. That's why they got into business. It wasn't to be the master of retirement plans. It wasn't to be the master of business practices or hiring or other stuff. So it brings to the point of really hiring a team of consultants, which you bring up, which is important. I do have a question on stage 5, which kind of lands into my world a little bit more. When you start talking about HR, you start talking about people operations, you talk about keeping key people. Talk a little bit about non-qualified deferred comp, and specifically what businesses, because we do a lot of work with startups, what businesses should keep in mind when they're putting these plans in place, and what employees should look for.
Oh, exactly. So with deferred comp, right? These are usually for companies that have large contribution limits, but there's still a ceiling within a qualified retirement plan. So once an owner has maximized their qualified retirement plan options, some businesses begin exploring the non-qualified deferred compensation strategies. And these plans operate outside of the traditional retirement plan rules and allows companies to design customized arrangements for owners and key executives. So they're often used for executive retention, succession planning, or additional tax deferred opportunities. The most effective retirement plans really evolve as the business grows. So what starts as a simple plan for a small business eventually becomes a comprehensive strategy that supports tax efficiency, employee retention, wealth accumulation, and ultimately the owner's long-term planning exit.
Yeah. Awesome.
And what are some of the implications that the employee should look out for when they're getting, whether it be stock options or whatever it may be, that sometimes people are not aware of that they should be?
Yeah. So typically, especially when we talk about non-qualified deferred compensation, it's typically offered by larger companies, publicly traded firms, or highly profitable private companies, right? The one that always seems to come to mind is generally going to be, doctor practices, as well as the legal practices. But even in the larger planning side of it, right, for large companies like the Apple, Microsoft, J&Js of the world, they generally offer bonus, salary, and stock compensation. So many financial firms use the non-qualified deferred comp for the higher earners who compensation exceed those limits. And when it comes to what are some of the key features about this is that participants, can be limited to select employees, right? There is this discretion that does come with that, right? And they can be discriminatory because it's generally meant for your higher income earners.
Yeah.
The contribution limits aren't capped like a 401k, and the benefits are typically paid in the future, right? Either by retirement or through separation. However, the assets remain in the company's general assets. So that means that the participants are exposed to company credit risk, right? So there's the trade-off that comes, as opposed to being, say, if you're working for a company and you have the 401k and you have your vesting, right? If it's vested and you leave, all of that can come with you.
Mhm.
If it's not completely vested, up to the point of what has been vested, plus your contributions, that can go with you. Any unvested shares stays within the company. Always keep in mind, whatever an employee contributes into the 401k, that is theirs 100% vested the whole time. That's transportable with you at a moment's notice. So many companies offer the non-qual deferred comp plans to executives and key employees as a way just to defer income beyond the limits of their traditional plans. They also allow participants to postpone taxation on compensation today in exchange for receiving those benefits in the future.
Yeah, I was just having a thought in terms of, and I don't know if you can speak on this, but that's also a way that, like, if a firm maybe doesn't have necessarily the assets on hand to be able, like, if they're trying to poach, an executive from another company or from a competitor, right? Being able to offer some type of non-qualified deferred comp plan is a way that they can sort of make their offer more attractive if they're able to, to pull them away if they don't have necessarily the money on hand to be able to compete, right?
Right. So I always like to use, especially being here on the East Coast, because every May we talk about being a big fan of baseball, and we have Bobby Bonilla Day. So when we have professional baseball players, a lot of a $750 million contract, they don't have $750 million lying around unless it's somewhere in a vault in Dodger Stadium, right? They build out these deferred compensation plans. So I always like to use a good example of it is the Bobby Bonilla deferred compensation. Mm-hmm. So in 2000, the Mets offered Bobby about $5.9 million remaining on his contract, and instead of paying immediately, they structured a deferred payment agreement. Bobby agreed to delay receiving the money, so allowed the team to spread the payments out over time. In exchange, the Mets agreed to add interest. So starting in 2011, Bobby began receiving $1.19 million per year, and he receives the payment every year until 2035. So this means that Bobby gets paid long after retiring from baseball, right? And he ends up having the total payout being roughly about just under $30 million from the original $5.9 million.
Yeah, it's insane. That's awesome.
Why did the Mets do it? Yeah, it's amazing. So at the time, right, the Mets believe that they can earn a higher return, invest in the money, with outside investors, and delay the payments over time. But the compounding effect really made its way through. So Bobby Bonilla Day, he has no problem cashing that check, every year, and we still got the 2035. How about that?
That's fantastic. That's so great.
Yep.
I could use a Bobby Bonilla. I could use a Frank Majorana day. That'd be nice. Oh, there we are. Yeah. But no, this has been awesome. Any as far as kind of as we're kind of starting to wrap up, any parting words of wisdom for small business owners out there that are starting and scaling and growing?
Yeah, absolutely. I think what has been impactful is looking at, 3 signs that your business has outgrown its retirement plan.
Mhm.
So most retirement plans aren't necessarily wrong. They're just outdated for the businesses today. So the 3 signs that we typically see that a company has outgrown its current plan. The first one is that the business is more profitable than when the plan was set up, right? Ali, it's just like as you said before, are we not planning, we're planning for all the pitfalls, the risks, the what if, but we're not thinking about, hey, what is it this thing actually works? And it works really well. So the first sign is profitability has increased significantly. Since the plan was originally implemented, so many businesses put a retirement plan in place, and when they were much smaller, but as the company's grown, the original structure may no longer be optimized for the owner in the business. So at that point, there may be opportunities to increase tax deductible contributions or redesign the plan to better fit what the company is today. The second sign of it is that the owner wants to save more than the plan allows, right? And this second sign is when the owner starts saying something like, boy, I'd really like to save more for retirement, but my plan doesn't allow it. This is usually a sign that the plan design might not be optimized. Sometimes it's a simple matter of adding another layer to the plan, whether that's profit sharing or a different allocation structure, or even a cash balance plan. And the third one is, taxes are becoming a major concern. And the third sign when it comes to those taxes, they becoming a significant concern of the owner. And the retirement plans are one of the most effective ways business owners can reduce taxable income while simultaneously building long-term wealth. So if taxes are starting to feel painful, that's often the right sign to revisit the retirement planning strategy.
And your phone just started ringing off the hook.
Yeah, here we go. At the end of the day, the most effective retirement plans aren't static, right? They evolve with the business, and the business that tends to benefit the most are the ones that revisit their plan design every few years to make sure it's in line where the company is today and where the owner ultimately wants to go.
Awesome. Well, any other final thoughts, Frank or Seamus?
No, I want to thank Seamus for the time. It's been a great conversation. Definitely learned a lot. Hopefully some people out there take some of your bits of wisdom and and apply it and reach out. But thank you very much for taking the time to chat with us.
Yeah, it was my pleasure. I love being on the cast. So looking forward to doing these in the future.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to bring you back for more conversations, just because this is definitely something that I want to increase my knowledge and familiarity with, and just being able to understand what it is that you do when I talk to the clients that I'm working with, and just being able to listen out for those signals of, hey, like you said, taxes starting to get painful. They want to maybe save for retirement. They're starting to look at, exiting the business at some point, making sure that I can hear the right things to be able to say, like, okay, this is the time for you to start talking to Seamus, right? Because time is really your biggest advantage when it comes to whatever stage of the retirement ladder that you're in.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Awesome. Okay. Well, that is our time for today. Let's see what we have coming up next. March 25th. We're going to be speaking with Dave Facone. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. From B Shore, we're going to be talking about From Intro to Opportunity, business networking strategies. And we hope to continue to see you all here for the next Scale Smarter series. We're not here next week, but this will be on the 25th. And if you have any topics or subjects or questions that you would like us to dive back in on with some of the professionals that we've had on so far, especially if you rewatch this one, please let us know. Shoot me a message or shoot Frank a message. We'd love to bring back Seamus and all the other professionals that we've had to continue to dive deeper on some of these topics.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
All right. Take care.
Take care, guys. Bye.